All right, so this month I want to talk a little bit more about digestion, specifically stomach acid, for several reasons. I've become fascinated with stomach acid over the last decade. Number one, it's very poorly understood. Number two, it's heavily medicated. And number three, it's arguably one of the most important phases of digestion. Conventional wisdom on acid reflux is that it's caused by too much stomach acid, which, as you'll learn, particularly if you do your own due diligence, is false. While the research community has moved on from the theory that acid reflux is caused by too much stomach acid years ago, unfortunately, in mainstream media and in conventional medicine, it still holds true. So for example, if you go to see your primary care physician and you talk about having some digestive issues and acid reflux, more than likely you're going to be put on antacids and not asked anything about diet, lifestyle, etc. So that's an incorrect approach for most of the population. So let's talk a little bit more about the stomach and stomach acid. Stomach is like the key first phase of digestion. It stores, mixes, and breaks down food. When food arrives, a hormone called gastrin is secreted, which triggers hydrochloric acid production. Now, hydrochloric acid is extremely acidic, so the environment of the stomach is very harsh, very low pH. Now, this stimulation of hydrochloric acid in acidic environment is crucial for several reasons. Number one, it helps to prevent and inhibit bacterial overgrowth. Number two, it's critical for shredding apart all that protein that you're trying to squeeze into your diet so your body can break it down into amino acids for further distribution around the body. Hydrochloric acid also stimulates the release of pancreatic enzymes, which is super crucial to begin the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates as they move into the small intestine. Okay, so just take a couple steps back. If stomach acid secretion is insufficient, and therefore the pH levels of the stomach start to become too high, you can start to put together the picture of, okay, protein probably isn't getting broken down efficiently, and carbohydrates aren't being broken down further for movement into the small intestine. Well, what happens then? That's where you can start to run into issues like bacterial infections, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Digestive symptoms like gas and bloating are often very common when there's insufficient stomach acid production. A couple of things to know about stomach acid production as well is that it declines with age. It's estimated, I think it's probably underestimated because it's underdiagnosed, that about 2 to 15% of the population is actually dealing with insufficient stomach acid production as opposed to too much acid production. Just know that as you get older, particularly over the age of 50, stomach acid production declines by about 50%. It affects a tremendous number of the population. Let's take a few steps back to conclude and then come up with some strategies. So hopefully you can see why stomach acid secretion is so important and why you actually don't want to suppress it. Most digestive complaints are actually secondary to insufficient or too little stomach acid production as opposed to too much. Let's talk about strategies to start to improve stomach acid secretion and or to treat acid reflux if that's what you're starting to deal with. Number one, if you're on antacid meds right now, only under medical supervision should you start to titrate off of those meds. So make sure you're working with your healthcare practitioner to do this because that can be a pretty nasty road. So you want to start to titrate off the meds and increase your intake of digestive enzymes that contain hydrochloric acid very specifically. Number two is find out if infections are present, something like SIBO or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. There are tests for that because you need to treat underlying pathology before you start to just essentially self-treat or diagnose. So make sure you're clear from any sort of digestive infections. Number three, you might have to reduce carb intake for a little while to get this under control. Because remember, if stomach acid secretion has been insufficient for a while, there's a probability that pancreatic enzymes have not been able to be stimulated either, and that carbohydrate digestion has been compromised. The other thing to consider, depending on your current lifestyle and diet, is to consider a paleo approach to nutrition, which is removing the obvious players. Sometimes wheat and gluten are contributing to these issues, but consider cleaning up your diet and a paleo-based approach, which can have a beneficial impact on digestion, gut flora, immune system function, etc. So hopefully this was a little bit of an eye-opener about stomach acid and how important its production is, and some strategies to look at if you are either on antacids, you can go and have this conversation with your doc, or some quick nutritional tips that you can begin to implement to treat the underlying cause of what's going on. Hopefully these strategies help. I look forward to hearing from you.